On a seemingly ordinary July morning in 2020, a livestock farmer was going about his daily routine when an unexpected series of events unfolded. Around 5:30 a.m., as he tended to his animals, he heard the distant sound of a vehicle approaching. Moments later, he noticed someone had broken through his farm's gate. Concerned about potential livestock thieves, the farmer alerted his wife, instructing her to lock the doors and contact authorities if she heard a warning shot. Armed with his shotgun, the farmer ventured out to investigate. He discovered the gate's chain and padlock had been forcibly removed, and fresh tire tracks led through his field towards the nearby river. Though the mysterious vehicle had vanished, something caught his eye: a curtain partially submerged in the water. Upon closer inspection, the farmer made a gruesome discovery that would shock the community. Wrapped within the curtain was the body of a young man, later identified as Lee McKnight. The victim, only in his 20s, had suffered extensive, brutal injuries. Investigators would soon reveal that McKnight had been viciously beaten, bound, and callously tossed into the river, while still clinging to life, where he ultimately drowned. This chilling case would uncover a web of deceit, violence, and the dangerous consequences of involvement in the drug trade. As police investigated Lee McKnight's murder, they faced challenges in gathering witness statements. Many individuals were hesitant to come forward. However, McKnight's best friend provided valuable insights into the victim's character and the potential motives behind his death. According to his friend, Lee McKnight was a personable and easygoing individual who had been drawn into the world of street-level drug dealing. The allure of quick money proved irresistible to McKnight, as he could earn more in a week through illegal activities than he could in a month of legitimate work. However, McKnight's involvement in the drug trade came with significant risks and mounting debts. He operated on a credit system, receiving drugs up front and paying his suppliers after selling the product. This arrangement left him vulnerable when rival gangs robbed him of his inventory. Although McKnight managed to avoid physical harm during these encounters, often talking his way out of dangerous situations, he still owed money for the stolen drugs. This outstanding debt put him under constant threat of violence from his suppliers. Despite these close calls and looming dangers, McKnight continued his illicit activities, driven by a desperate need for cash. His friend described the drug world McKnight inhabited as truly perilous, a seedy underworld populated by aggressive predators who were quick to resort to extreme violence to achieve their goals. Interestingly, McKnight's personality seemed at odds with this harsh environment. His friend emphasized that Lee wasn't the type to deliberately provoke conflict or engage in macho posturing. When faced with trouble, McKnight's instinct was always to negotiate and diffuse tensions rather than escalate them. According to his friend, Lee had likely never been in a physical altercation, preferring to use his interpersonal skills to navigate dangerous situations. This portrayal of Lee McKnight paints a complex picture of a man caught between his affable nature and the brutal realities of the drug trade, ultimately leading to his tragic demise. Lee McKnight's life took a dark turn when he found himself in debt to Jamie Davidson, a higher-level drug dealer. The two men had known each other for over a decade, with their roles in the drug trade shifting over time. McKnight owed Davidson more than £2,000, a debt that would prove fatal. Davidson, a middleman in the drug trade, dealt cocaine, heroin, and cannabis to lower-level dealers. He typically invested £18,000 to £20,000 for half a kilogram of cocaine every fortnight, collecting payments from his customers to pay his suppliers. However, Davidson himself was facing mounting pressure from his own creditors. In July 2020, after a brief stint in custody, Davidson was approaching a crucial July 24th payment deadline. He owed nearly £10,000 to higher-level criminals who were sending increasingly threatening messages, warning of dire consequences if the debt remained unpaid. The situation escalated when Davidson, accompanied by two intimidating associates armed with a baseball bat and a large spanner, forcibly entered the home of McKnight's friend. Their goal was to send a message to the hiding McKnight, heightening his fear for his safety. Despite his efforts to lay low, McKnight's past caught up with him in the early hours of July 24th. Lured out of hiding by flirtatious messages from his ex-girlfriend, 26-year-old Coral Edgar, McKnight arrived at a terrace house on Charles Street at 2:40 a.m. Unbeknownst to him, this was a trap set in collaboration with Coral's drug-addicted mother, Carol, 47, both regular customers of McKnight's drug business. The moment McKnight entered the house, he was ambushed. Over the next 2 hours, he endured a brutal assault at the hands of Davidson and 2 recruited accomplices, 26-year-old Aaron Graham and 17-year-old Jamie Lee Roberts. The violence was extreme, leaving McKnight with 9 fractured ribs, a fractured skull, and 36 separate injuries to his head alone. Police investigators later revealed that the house was covered in blood, suggesting McKnight may have been tied to a chair during the attack. His injuries were so severe that he resembled a torture victim. Despite being unconscious and bleeding profusely, McKnight was still alive at this point. Instead of seeking medical help for the gravely injured McKnight, his attackers made the cruel decision to dispose of him. They used Carol Edgar's Nissan Navara pickup to transport McKnight's battered body. This callous act ultimately sealed McKnight's fate, transforming a brutal assault into a horrific murder. This tragic series of events illustrates the ruthless nature of the drug underworld, where deaths can quickly escalate into life-threatening situations, and the line between dealer and victim can blur in an instant. Lee McKnight's ordeal culminated in a horrific finale. Wrapped in a curtain, his battered body was unceremoniously loaded into Carol Edgar's Nissan Navara pickup. The assailants drove to the River Caldew, where they callously dragged McKnight from the vehicle and tossed him into the water. It was here, in the cold depths of the river, that Lee McKnight met his end by drowning. The aftermath of this brutal crime was marked by a shocking lack of accountability. All 6 individuals accused in McKnight's death refused to accept responsibility, instead pointing fingers at one another. Jamie Davidson claimed that 17-year-old Jamie Lee Roberts, armed with a knuckle duster, had been excessively violent. He alleged that Roberts' father was supposed to take McKnight to the hospital, but instead dumped him in the river. Jamie Lee Roberts, in turn, blamed Davidson for McKnight's death, labeling him a psychopath. Aaron Graham denied any involvement, insisting he wasn't present at Charles Street during the attack and played no part in removing McKnight's body. Coral Edgar, battling addiction and mental health issues, claimed she was too terrified to intervene. She said she only witnessed McKnight being punched near the front door and had curled up in a chair, hiding her face in her hands during the violence. Her mother, Carol Edgar, denied being at the house during the attack and claimed she never authorized the use of her Nissan Navara. Paul Roberts, Jamie Lee's father, maintained he was merely looking out for his son. He asserted that he had urged the others to get help for McKnight and had even tried to assist the severely injured man himself at Charles Street. While the full truth of Lee McKnight's final moments may never be known, this tragic case starkly illustrates the destructive nature of the illicit drug trade. It exposed the grim realities faced by those caught in its web, like Coral Edgar, who had been addicted since her teens. Spending £40 daily on cocaine and £20 on cannabis, she used drugs to escape the harsh realities of her home life in what she described as a chaotic crack den. The situation was equally dire for Coral's mother, Carol. Having been evicted from her home following a relationship breakdown, she too had fallen into the grip of a damaging addiction. This case serves as a sobering reminder of the far-reaching and often fatal consequences of drug addiction and the violent criminal underworld that surrounds it. It highlights how quickly situations can escalate in this dangerous environment, leaving devastation in their wake. Following the brutal murder of Lee McKnight, the perpetrators attempted to cover their tracks. The Nissan Navara used to transport McKnight's body was abandoned in a wooded area, left to be discovered later. Paul Roberts, 51, aided his son Jamie Lee Roberts by providing fresh clothes after the attack. and disposing of the blood-stained garments. Despite claiming he tried to assist the gravely injured McKnight, Paul Roberts' actions ultimately contributed to the cover-up. The legal proceedings that followed were extensive. After a trial spanning several weeks, all 6 defendants were found guilty of murder, despite their initial denials. The court handed down severe sentences, with the group collectively receiving 119 years in prison. Presiding over the case, the Honorable Mr. Justice Hilliard delivered a damning assessment of the crime. He specifically highlighted the actions of Jamie Davidson and Aaron Graham, stating that both men were aware McKnight was still alive when they made the deliberate decision to drown him. In his judgment, Justice Hilliard characterized the act as both a murder for gain and a murder intended to obstruct the course of justice. The judge's ruling reflected the gravity of the crime, sentencing all 6 individuals to life in prison for their roles in Lee McKnight's murder. This verdict underscored the serious consequences awaiting those who participate in such heinous acts, regardless of their level of involvement. This case serves as a stark reminder of the brutality that can arise from drug-related conflicts and the severe legal repercussions for those involved in such violent crimes. It also highlights the complexities of group dynamics in criminal activities, where attempts to shift blame ultimately failed to sway the court's decision. The lengthy sentences handed down reflect society's condemnation of such acts and the justice system's commitment to holding accountable all those who participate in serious crimes, whether directly or indirectly. The court's sentencing in the Lee McKnight murder case reflected the varying degrees of involvement and culpability of each defendant. The judgments handed down were severe, emphasizing the gravity of the crime and the legal system's intolerance for such brutal acts. Coral Edgar, who played a role in luring McKnight to his death, received a life sentence with a minimum term of 13.5 years before eligibility for parole. Her mother, Carol Edgar, whose vehicle was used in the crime, was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum of 13 years. Jamie Davidson, identified as a key figure in orchestrating the murder, received the harshest sentence. He was given life imprisonment with a minimum term of 30 years, reflecting his central role in the crime. Aaron Graham, who participated in the assault and was involved in disposing of McKnight's body in the river, was sentenced to life with a minimum of 26 years behind bars. The court took into account Jamie Lee Roberts' youth at the time of the offense. At 17 years old when the crime was committed, he was still sentenced to life imprisonment, but with a lower minimum term of 16.5 years. Paul Roberts, who assisted in the aftermath of the murder by helping to cover up evidence, received a life sentence with a minimum term of 20.5 years. That is it for today's video. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you on the next one. Thank you.